To summarize, we have an ordinary loser who has never fought even once his entire life. He suddenly becomes a lethal weapon who can fight better than Bruce Leroy. We also have a fighter with a scar on his left eye who always has an emotionless face. We have plenty of thugs that get beat up, and we have female spies. Please enjoy the story. The story begins with a tattooed butcher who looked like a thug, and a man in a suit, we'll call him the suit for now, were seen walking into a meat locker. These two, along with the meat locker, look pretty sketchy. They pause in front of a door to a room hidden deep within the meat locker. The butcher tells the suit that a few more came in and only 5 were left. Hopefully he was referring to dead animal carcasses. With an expressionless face, the suit tells the butcher to arrange everything well since a large deal was heading their way soon. While turning the handle to open the door to the hidden room, the butcher tells the suit not to worry since it was their main source of income. Inside this room were multiple human bodies that were tied up.
Oh my God!
Several were hanging like slabs of meat waiting to be butchered, while others were on the floor being cleaned and prepared by workers in masks. The suit, with a serious tone, tells the butcher not to make any mistakes. If the upcoming deal goes well, then they wouldn't have to worry about money again for a very long time. The butcher grips the knife in his right hand tightly and chuckles while saying, "Of course!" He then goes on to say, with all that money, he'll have more food to consume. At that moment, the suit noticed the butcher's abrupt change in tone and demeanor. In a surprise attack, the butcher stabs the knife into the suit's stomach, while the suit looked at the butcher's action in a cool manner, showing no signs of panic. After initiating the knife attack, the butcher, with a crazed look and in a cursing tone, tells the suit that since they always do all the work gathering bodies and doing the butchering, then they should get to have all the money too. Puzzled, the butcher looks at the suit in confusion because he had no change in expression after being stabbed. He looked down at the location where he stabbed the man and exclaimed in surprise that the knife did not penetrate the suited man's body. Not being able to comprehend what just happened, the butcher stares at the knife in his hand and keeps asking himself why the knife wasn't able to go through. In a calm tone, the suited man responds to the butcher that his suit was very expensive and very special. Then he points out that his suit was stab-proof. Flustered, the butcher screams in a nervous tone that he didn't understand what the suited man was saying. The butcher then prepared for another attack. The suited man touched his tie, which caused the suit to react. Then in a blink of an eye, he seemed to disappear and then reappear behind the butcher. The butcher was too slow to react, and as a result, had his head grabbed from the rear and his face slammed brutally to the ground. The rest of the butcher thugs were speechless, seeing their leader's face slammed to the floor. The man in the suit seemed to have abilities that surpassed those of a normal human being. The man in the suit's name is Lee Tae-hyung and is a representative of the corpse theft company. He lets go of the unconscious butcher's head and calls the group of thugs a bunch of scumbags that would betray you at any given moment. He then calmly issues the command to the group to slice up the bodies and sell the parts. The scene shifts to a quiet-looking and run-down part of the city. A hysterical young loser, our protagonist named Kim Ji-won, cries out that he ran out of money, and his investments seem to have been plummeting in value. In a fit of rage, he starts kicking the desk furiously, and eventually lost his balance and fell backwards. While lying down on the dingy floor looking up at the ceiling, he contemplates how his life is now ruined. No, he corrects himself, his life has always been miserable. This was his reality, growing up without any parents to take care of him. He picks himself up off the floor and thinks to himself how it would be better if he was submerged in the Han River. Or if he were born as a tree, where all he had to do was stand still and just breathe. He had invested all his rent money into the tanking crypto and pondered whether he should find a part-time job. While deep in thought, loud knocking was heard coming from the door. Someone was calling out his name. When he opened the door, he saw an older acquaintance. He immediately told his older friend that he would pay the money next week. The older friend stated that he wasn't there for money. He offered our protagonist a part-time job that paid well, which caught our boy by surprise. This deal sounds too good to be true, and this older friend looks like a dirtbag. Sigh, let's continue on to see what happens. The scene changes to the woods where it is now nighttime. A group of people are seen digging a large hole in the ground. Our MC, or main character, recalls what his friend said about the part-time job. It wasn't delivering drugs or voice phishing. It was an illegal job, but overall not a bad job. That should have been a red flag, idiot protagonist. The job was related to dead people. Our protagonist wondered if the job had to do with digging up corpses from graves. He continued with his recollection of what his friend told him, that corpses were needed by many companies like pharmaceutical, medical device, and cosmetic companies, to name a few. Their group had to gather bodies to supply to these companies. Older corpses are more difficult to track, while more recent ones are much easier. One method they use to track down bodies is through funeral homes. Then they secretly and quietly dig up the bodies at night. Using machinery would cause too much of a scene, so it had to be done manually by hand. His train of thought was interrupted by a shout from one of the workers. He looked over at the group and noticed the guy in the suit with the nasty scar along the left eye, Lee Tae-hyung. He wondered if this guy was the boss? He commented inside that this fellow's face looked terrible. His friend that recommended this job came over to chat with him and asked if the job was manageable. Our protagonist, with a slightly worried face, replied that it wasn't that difficult a job for the pay, and that no one was harmed. His older friend nodded his head in agreement to our protagonist's statement. He then looked at our main character with a pitiful gaze and went on to say that there was some risk involved. This put our protagonist on alert, wondering what that risk might be. The friend went on to say, with a slightly evil smirk on his face, that it wasn't a common thing, but sometimes, just sometimes. Before he could finish his sentence, a worker crept up quietly with a shovel behind our MC and swung it at his head. Our protagonist was knocked out cold and dropped down to the floor with a loud thud. The dirtbag friend looked at our unconscious protagonist on the ground with a slightly psychotic gaze. He finally continued his previous sentence, saying that sometimes fresh living bodies were needed by companies. The worker that knocked our protagonist unconscious asked the dirtbag friend if he was certain about everything he told them. The dirtbag responded that he was 100% sure, while he casually placed a cigarette into his mouth. He went on to explain that it was an old and all too common story. Our main character had no parents or anyone to look for him because of bad relationships, so if he suddenly went missing, then there would be no issue. The man in the suit and with the eye scar told the dirtbag that he would give him a nice bonus for delivering our protagonist. Then he ordered that our protagonist remain alive for now, but should be tied up and kept in the storage locker. He was going to present the boy as a gift. Everyone confirmed the order, while our poor unconscious boy remained motionless on the floor. We are now inside the storage locker. Our MC is tied up and gagged. It's unknown how long he's been in this large freezer for. He eventually wakes up, only to see that he's unable to move while completely surrounded by bodies. Like anyone else who finds themselves in a certain location one moment and then in a different location the next, he begins to wonder what might have happened. He suddenly realized that he just became part of something sinister, like a trafficking ring. He cursed his dirtbag friend for dragging him into this mess and for trying to turn him into a corpse. Knowing he was in a desperate situation where his life was at stake, he told himself to calm down and think of ways to escape. His first task was to untie the rope. He spotted a ladder across the room with some sharp edges that could probably be used to cut the restraints. Meanwhile, his scumbag friend was slowly approaching the freezer locker, while whistling an upbeat tune and twirling the locker keys around his finger. He was apparently elated to have received his bonus, and quietly apologized inside to our MC for selling him out for money. After opening the door to the freezer locker, he wondered if our protagonist was still asleep and said in a soft voice that it was time for Ji-won to go to heaven. Not expecting our MC to already be awake, the scumbag froze in place in shock. Ji-won was able to catch this deceitful friend off guard by smacking him in the face and knocking him down to the ground. He was able to land several hard blows to his friend's face in anger, while his friend lay on the floor. After being pummeled continuously, the dirtbag was unable to move, while our protagonist started cursing at him. He said that he trusted him and thought of him as an older brother. He immediately cut himself off, telling himself that this was not the time to be doing this. He needed to escape from this place before it was too late. When he left the freezer locker, he was quickly confronted by a group of thugs. Before he was even able to start running, he was already restrained and once again tied up like before. He was dumped in front of their group leader, who was referred to as General Manager Choi from a health supplement distribution company. The general manager looked at our boy in a slightly annoyed manner and said that it was too noisy. The one in the suit, Tae Hee-young, apologized to the general manager. He explained that a fresh living human was requested, so our protagonist was the one they prepared to hand over. And since he was a living person instead of a corpse, there was a possibility that some minor issues would arise, like if the subject tried to escape. General Manager Choi closed his eyes, casually agreed to everything Tae Hee-young mentioned, and said it was to be expected. He then moved on to talking business with him. Tae Hee-young asked for the location the bodies should be delivered to. He also requested to meet Manager Choi's superiors this time around. Manager Choi answered that his superiors were all busy and might not be able to meet. He then continued on to say that the bodies should be sent to the warehouse. One of Manager Choi's lackeys walked up to him and whispered something in his ear. He blurted out, "Oh really?" after hearing what his lackey told him. It was as if he had just found out something fascinating. He looked at the suited man and told him that he just received some interesting news. He followed up by stating that their business talks might change a bit. Curious at what the interesting news might be, the suit probingly asked whether it was good news or bad. Speaking with narrowed eyes at the suit, Manager Choi tells him that it wasn't much. He says that his company received an important tip. The tip was that he was revealed to be a spy. Out of nowhere, Tae Hee-young was smashed in the head with an object. He was caught off guard with no time to react, so he could only fall down to the floor after taking the hit. Manager Choi gloatingly looks at the injured Tae Hee-young and asks if the police had spies these days. He then yelled out his command to capture the spy. His lackeys completely surrounded Tae Hee-young, who was still a little dazed from the surprise blow to the head. But he quickly recovered from the daze and then swiftly touched his tie, which instantly activated his suit. His abilities were once again enhanced, and he was able to easily land several blows to the closest unlucky thug, quickly crushing him. The rest of Manager Choi's lackeys rushed the spy from behind, looking for revenge for their fallen comrade. The unfortunate fellow leading the pack did not see the punch heading straight towards him and therefore had his mouth smashed in. There was no way a normal person could dodge a superhuman's punch. Another lackey managed to land a lucky hit with a bat that grazed the spy's head, but it was unable to deal any real damage to immobilize him. The spy threw a backhand at the bat-wielding thug and quickly defeated him. He shot a glance at the rest of the charging group of idiots and decided to rapidly take care of them in order to capture their leader before he ran away. The speed of his punches and kicks were so fast that the group of lackeys were unable to dodge or fight back, so it was inevitable that they would be defeated in no time. Our protagonist, who was still tied up and watching the show from the sidelines, was a little confused and wondered if he heard right. He asked himself, the guy in the suit was a spy? That man with the terrible face was a spy? Manager Choi had a look of nervousness watching Tae Hee-young defeating one lackey after the other. He couldn't figure out how it was possible for a normal person to move the way the spy was moving. Soon, none of his lackeys would be left, and it would be his turn to be defeated. Knowing that he needed to hurry, Manager Choi ordered his lackey to get rid of our protagonist, while he went ahead to take care of other pressing matters. The lackey nodded in confirmation to his order. Unable to scream or run away, our MC could only helplessly watch in horror as the thug with the menacing look slowly approached him holding a knife. Unexpectedly, the spy came to our MC's rescue, sucker punched the thug from his blind side, and knocked him the hell out. After cleaning up the last of the thugs, the spy walked up to our protagonist, ripped the tape off his mouth, and asked him if he was okay. Still unsure about this guy's identity, our MC directly asked him who he really was. And his response to the "Are you okay?" question was another question of, "Do I look okay to you?" The spy, Tae Hee-young, while untying our protagonist, started apologizing to him for getting him involved in all this mess, and for using him as bait to lure the bad guys. Not caring for Tae Hee-young's apology, and while grinding his teeth bitterly, our main character remarks that this was their problem, not his. He was only looking for a part-time job, but was forced to get involved in this chaos. He asks the spy what he was going to do if the thugs came back again. Tae Hee-young once again asks for forgiveness. He says that he'll take responsibility and began to strip down to his underwear, greatly confusing our MC not knowing the reason for the strip show. The spy tells our protagonist not to get any weird ideas. He explains that the suit he just took off was a special suit they use in their organization. He continues his explanation, saying that the suit was not only bulletproof and stab-proof, but depending on something called the sync rate, one could also use physical enhancements and special abilities. He then points out that the abilities he displayed when he fought all came from the suit. He hands the special suit over to our main character and tells him that he needed to wear it and run away. Our protagonist accepts the suit and realizes that this suit in his hands was the reason why the spy was so fast. He stares at the suit in his hands like it was a priceless treasure and asks, if he wears the suit, then what would happen to the spy? The spy responds that he'll have to take responsibility like he said before. Ji-won puts on the suit and heads towards the exit. He looks back at Tae Hee-young and comments that he'll run and call the police. He wonders if there was a good place for him to hide. The spy watches our protagonist run away with a blank face. He once again apologizes to the unlucky fellow. He feels terrible about the whole situation. He then confesses the real reason he gave the boy the suit. It was to use him as bait a second time. Hee hee. Our poor MC is so gullible to have been used as bait once more. Once our main character was out of sight, the spy started communicating with his team through an earpiece. With the bait released, he ordered his team to activate the suit and to try to stall their enemies for as long as possible. He was way too exhausted to continue fighting. He needed to figure out a way to escape and regroup with his team. If our MC was captured, he most likely wouldn't be killed right away, since he's not an agent. The spy promised he would rescue the boy if it came to that worst-case scenario. The female agent who received Tae Hee-young's instructions called him team leader and confirmed his orders. She also requested backup from nearby agents to assist. We see our pitiful protagonist, with a serious look, running around the shipping port trying to escape that wretched place. His suit was loose-fitting, making for an awkward look. Since he's been having so much bad luck lately, we doubt that he'll be able to leave the place unnoticed and unharmed. As expected, he was spotted by a group of bad guys who immediately attempted to capture him. Curiously, they identified him as the long hair in a suit. His mind started racing, looking for possible escape routes to avoid capture, and he wondered why he wasn't getting any faster while wearing the suit. Was there some kind of trick he wasn't aware of for activating it? Unfortunately, by the time he finished his thoughts, he had already been completely surrounded by the group of hoodlums. With nowhere else to run, he could only stand still in the center of their encirclement and listen to different members of the group, doubting his identity as their target. He had been called the long hair in a suit a few times already. One guy said in a skeptical tone that his hair was long but not that long. After pausing for a moment to gather his thoughts, it finally dawned on him why the people chasing after him were calling him the long hair in a suit. He looked at his hands with cold sweat trickling down his face, realizing that he had been tricked yet again. He felt like such a sucker to have been used as bait for a second time by that long-haired bastard. When he thought back to the time when that spy prick calmly handed him the suit and urged him to run away, our boy couldn't help but get angry. He wasn't able to hold it in any longer, and finally let out a scream of frustration. Meanwhile, back in the agent meeting room, the two female agents were discussing our MC's situation. One agent questioned whether activating the suit changed anything for the boy. Does it really give him any advantage under his current circumstance? She then goes on to say that any civilian who hadn't been trained properly to use the special suit won't even reach a 10% sink rate. But on the bright side, the suit reduces the danger because of the fact that it was bulletproof and stab-proof. Their discussion was suddenly interrupted because the suit's monitoring system started to show signs of feedback. Their attention was redirected to the monitoring screen. With a hint of bewilderment, they wondered what was going on with the protagonist that caused the reaction. We see our boy getting pummeled in the face left and right by punches and relentlessly getting kicked in the legs, while he could only helplessly grunt in pain after receiving each hit. The suit remained dormant even after he was taking all this punishment. Then a man, who looks to be like a final boss character in those fighting video games, walks out from the crowd heading towards our MC holding a bat. He intended to make quick work of the boy. Our protagonist tried to reason with this toad-faced boss by explaining that there seemed to be a slight misunderstanding between them. Annoyed at seeing the skinny runt trying to timidly explain his way out of the hopeless situation, the impatient toad-faced boss told the boy to shut up. Then he motioned his hand for the boy to come to him. Of course, our protagonist wouldn't dare listen to the toad-faced creep and deliver himself into the wolf's hands, only to get beaten up and dragged away. He desperately tried to think of a way to get out of the situation. Angered that the boy ignored his command, the toad-face prepared to strike the boy with a vicious blow, while the only thing our boy could do was raise his hands to block the attack. Our protagonist knew that if he was captured, then most likely he would be punished and maybe even tortured. Fed up and furious, he ended up yelling out, "Come on!" He didn't care anymore and decided to risk his life to escape. At that exact moment, back at the meeting room, the two female agents became alarmed. The suit monitoring system showed signs of abnormal behavior, almost like it was going into overdrive. It wasn't the type of behavior one would see from a rookie first-timer wearing the suit. The senior agent couldn't help but jump up out of her seat in confusion and ask what in the world was going on. The suit had just recognized Ji-won as a new user. It began calculating its sync rate with this new user. The sync rate started rapidly climbing exponentially, 10%, 20%, 40%. It kept rising with no signs of stopping, 80%, 98%, 99.99999. Finally, the monitoring system warned that the threshold had been exceeded and began synchronizing the brain nerves. Looks like our protagonist just went Super Saiyan. While the system finished activating the brain nerve sync and muscle fiber enhancement of the user, the senior agent couldn't help but call our MC a monster. His sync rate was pure madness. At the same time all this was happening in the meeting room, our protagonist was staring at the toad-faced boss approaching to deliver a vicious blow. He was able to dodge the attack with little effort. This really pissed off the attacker, who immediately prepared to deliver another powerful strike. Our protagonist was able to easily track the enemy's movements. It was like he was watching a slow-motion film. He was again able to dodge the powerful second attack with ease and quickly slip behind this toad-faced enemy. Our boy couldn't help but laugh like a maniac because of his newfound power. He felt somewhat invincible, now that he was able to toy with his enemy. Mr. Toadface turned around in surprise and puzzlement, not knowing how this wimp was able to avoid his blows. As his reward for turning around to look at our MC, Toadface was given a brutal super punch that he never saw coming. The super punch our boy delivered was so strong that it literally sent the thug flying backwards like a rocket. Even the group of onlooking thugs, directly in the path of the flying Toadface, could not stop his momentum and were hurled into the air upon impact. With a very loud bang and what looked like a huge explosion, the miserable Toadface's momentum was finally stopped when he collided with one of the large shipping containers. Needless to say, he was knocked unconscious and it was uncertain whether he was still alive.
You got knocked the hell out!
The group of bad guys could only look at their strongest fighter in disbelief lying motionless, wondering how this skinny fellow could easily crush their fighter. While the thugs were still frozen in place staring at their defeated fighter, the suit began to automatically adjust its size to our MC's measurements. It completed the adjustment in only a matter of moments, and it finally looked like the perfect suit on our boy. Back in the meeting room, the two agents were staring at the over 99% sync rate on the monitor and were clueless as to what would happen next. The senior agent recalled that there was only one other person in history who exceeded the 99% sync rate threshold. She went on to describe that this person became a national-level strategic weapon, like a nuclear bomb. Our protagonist started laughing hysterically like he was on drugs after the suit automatically adjusted its fit on him. He'd never felt this good his entire miserable life, so we could see how much joy he was feeling right now. It looked like destroying the previous fighter was not enough to satisfy him, and he was eager to test out his new abilities further. One of the thugs yelled out to the others to catch the boy in the suit. I guess these thugs thought that if they attacked the boy altogether, then he stood no chance against them. Our MC stood calmly in the center of the incoming attackers with a slight grin on his face. Since these group of idiots delivered themselves to him, he now had a chance to further test out his abilities. He jumped up high in the air, ready to drop kick the first enemy his foot comes into contact with.